What was the exact moment you realized they'd never be your future spouse? Story 1. When she lost her job, and 2 years later, I started to put a dot on the calendar whenever she went to the casino while I was at work. The fact that I felt the need to do it was telling enough, but when faced with it, she flat out denied how often she was going. She was going 3 to 4 times a week, and I found out later she was thousands of dollars in debt. I was out of there. Story 2. When we got in a fight, she punched, yes, she, a hole in the closet door, then went to the liquor store and took her anger out on the wrong person, who proceeded to hit her over the back of the head with a bottle and give her a skull fracture. She was absolutely insufferable. Refused treatment by the ambulance, refused to let me take her to the ER, refused a second ambulance treatment. She had a splitting headache for days and finally let me take her to the ER after like 6 days. She found out she had a skull fracture. When she got out, she needed 24/7 observation for 2 weeks, and I had a job and responsibilities. I called her mom, who came and took her. When she came back, I had all her stuff packed up in her car, ready for her to move out. I did not play. Story 3. I don't even remember what the argument was about anymore, but when she grabbed me by the throat in the car, that was the moment. There's no going back from that or moving forward. I quietly made my exit plans, called off the engagement, and left. That was the first escalation, and I don't doubt that it would have increased over the years had I stayed. Story 4. When he asked me to bring him home fries after work, I stopped by McDonald's and got 2 large fries. I brought them in, and he proceeded to take the bag from me, open it, pull out the fries, and throw them in the trash right in front of me. I was shocked and asked what was wrong. "I wanted frozen fries," he said, then asked why I even came over. This caused me to think really hard about things in the past. There were so many other incidents like this that I had brushed off. That's when I realized no matter what I did, he would resent me and never be happy with me. Story 6. We were living together, super poor. One of our favorite bands came to town, Big Sugar. We talked about it, but it wasn't in the budget. Friday night rolls around and she's getting dressed to go out with her friends. "Where are you off to?" Big Sugar." "What? We talked about this and decided we couldn't afford to go." "Oh, we can't. But I can." Story 7. The night before I was going to propose, she called and said through tears, "I need you to know that if you ask me to marry you, I will have to say no." That was only the start of the realization. Over the next week, she divulged how years earlier she had been abducted and sexually abused, leaving her unable to have children, though she wanted kids. There was a lot of unprocessed trauma. Whether it was because of that or other things, she admitted that for as much as she valued our friendship, she couldn't bring herself to feel the kind of attraction that warrants a wedding. She had wanted to reveal this earlier but could never discern the right moment or find the courage. Now, with marriage on the immediate horizon, it all became overwhelming for her. For 3 months, I held out hope that counseling would fix things or that she'd have a sudden change of heart like in movies. Sadly, she was just nowhere near ready. One day, while I was cooking soup and talking to her on the phone, she told me she hoped we could stay friends forever, but she didn't see us ever marrying. I told her I couldn't be around her and not stay in love, so it was better to go separate ways. Even as I said it, I realized the soup had been boiling over for some time. I think that's when I accepted it was the end. Story 8. When my father took his last breath in front of me, I became very distraught, to say the least. Among other bad things like losing my friend group, my family acted like vultures over my father's estate, and my mother pulled shady moves that I'm 99% sure she did to stress my dad out. I poured it all out to my girlfriend at the time, and she told me I was too much to deal with. I didn't have to make the choice, though, because she up and cut herself out of my life. She decided to pull a full ghosting while I was busy struggling to set up all the after-death particulars like the funeral. Story 9. I was hit by a distracted driver as we were each traveling 50 plus. He T-boned me at an angle toward the front of my car, causing me to spin across multiple lanes of traffic and go backward into a steep ditch off a major highway. She was my emergency contact, and my iPhone immediately notified her of my potential accident as well as my location. She texted to ask if I was okay. I said I wasn't sure, but I'd been hit at high speed and to please come to the scene as I was very upset. She said she'd just gone over to her parents' house for a BBQ and that she'd check in with me later. I had a concussion for 2 weeks and was severely bruised everywhere. My mom ended up coming, and all my concussed brain could do was keep asking when my partner was going to arrive. My mom said, "Honey, she wouldn't leave a barbecue after you were in a serious car accident. I don't think she's ever coming." I found out 2 months later she'd also been cheating on me for about 8 months as well. Story 11. I left town for 2 weeks for a trip through the wilderness. I missed her like crazy and thought about how great it would be to see her once I got back. As soon as I called her, the first thing she said was, "Oh, wow, I didn't think about you at all." That really hurt, but it was the wake-up call I needed for that terrible relationship. Story 12. When she hyped up my birthday present for a month, it ended up being a $12 pair of red-framed sunglasses from Target. That's it. Also, when we'd been together for 7 years, she was asking me if she should make a huge decision. I thought she meant something like an engagement ring. This woman was asking me in subtext if she should cheat on me when she asked about making this huge decision. Dude, she was evil. Story 13. Her hand was around my neck, choking me until blackness started gathering in the corners of my vision. I wondered if I'd ever see my parents again. When she let go and oxygen flooded my brain, all I could think was that I could never excuse this. The moment it was safe, I left her. Story 14. There was a lot of cheating during her pregnancy, which should have been the penny drop moment. But honestly, I was knee-deep in a mental health crisis and couldn't see the forest for the trees, let alone evaluate the longevity of my relationship with the mother of my child. The real moment of clarity came 10 days postpartum. She was recovering from an emergency C-section after a traumatic 36-hour labor, the most pain she'd ever experienced. I was running errands, and she asked me to grab her a coffee. I told her it was out of my way and couldn't. An hour later, I walked in with a gas station coffee. She thought, "Oh, he's pulled through. It's not the best coffee, but it's the thought that counts." She was wrong. It was a coffee I'd bought for myself. That was the moment she realized she wasn't even really a person to me. Story 15. We were at her parents' house and got a good deal of snow overnight. In the morning, she went out to help her mom shovel. I sat on the couch on my phone for almost 2 hours while they shoveled. She asked if I wanted to help, and I just said no. It didn't itch at my conscience in the slightest to see her and her mom outside working while I played Angry Birds. I wasn't mad. It wasn't my house or my driveway. But I think she knew in that moment that our sense of care or duty or responsibility, or something along those lines, did not align, and we had an expiration date. Story 16. He told me he didn't want me to go to a concert for a band we both liked because he was taking his new girlfriend and didn't want there to be any issues. That is how I found out we weren't exclusive. I broke up with him straight away. 2 years later, we met randomly, and he ended up crying about how unhappy he was with her, how much he missed me, and how, even though they lived together, he slept on the couch. Yeah, sure, bud. Story 17. I dated someone who turned into a beast when she was hungry. It happened often. Right after eating, she would be fine. She'd say things like, "Wow, I feel so much better now." When I pointed out the correlation between being hangry and the difficulties it caused, she refused to see it or admit hunger was the cause. That's when I knew she was a complete moron and it would never work out. Story 18. When she proposed, yes, she. I knew she didn't mean it when she asked, and I knew it didn't count when I said yes. We'd been together for 6 years, and I was telling her I was unhappy with the fact that things had stagnated. It was one of many talks like that, and I was crying. She knelt down and asked me to marry her. I felt like I had to say yes, so I did. But I knew in the moment it wasn't real. We cuddled for a few minutes before I said I didn't think she'd meant it. Her response was, "Well, you kind of forced my hand." The whole thing felt gross and unfair. Story 19. Her parents caught us mid-elopement in the backyard, just as her dog, draped in a scarf, was about to officiate. 50 stuffed animals looked on as witnesses. their button eyes filled with silent judgment. Before we could seal the deal, her mom called out, "Hey, come inside, it's time for lunch." So we abandoned our vows, switched gears, and spent the afternoon playing pirate and princess instead. We never went back to our wedding day after that. Guess the magic was one time only. Story 20. We'd been together for half a year. I was talking about pink taxes and other women-oriented social issues, just generally complaining, ranting about it since I'd written an essay on it recently. All she had to say was, "Since I'm not a woman, none of that affects me, so I don't care about it." It took me another 6 months to realize it, but I think that was the moment I stopped seeing a future with her. Story 21. We'd been seeing each other 4 months when I mentioned a certain musician. She said, "Oh my God, I love him." I tried to continue talking about a song he was on, and she interrupted me with, "No, like I would marry him." I explained that, as her boyfriend, that was a dumb and hurtful thing to say. She agreed, apologized, and said she was just a longtime fan. I dropped it. A year later, we moved in together. Not because it was ideal, but out of necessity. A few months later, she mentioned the same musician doing a concert nearby and wanted to go. I wasn't a fan of him like that and didn't enjoy concerts in general, so I declined and encouraged her to go with friends instead. She brushed it off and kept talking about it, then casually mentioned hoping she got called backstage to get intimate with him and have his kids. We broke up but had to live together another month. Super fun. We dated 4 years, broke up for a year, then got back together for a 5th year. During that year, I went out of my way to achieve a lot of my dreams and gained more independence. One day we were talking about my achievements, and I said, "I always said I was going to do this stuff." She replied, "I know, but I never thought you'd actually do it." That's when I realized we wouldn't stay together. Story 23. Long story short, she tackled me in the woods after fighting with me on my birthday. She convinced me to come home with her, trapped me in her car, and refused to take me home because she knew I was leaving. I had to threaten to jump out of the moving vehicle for her to take me home, and she made me promise to come into the house with her. I kept that promise, and as I looked at her sitting on the bed, it hit me that we were done. Story 24. She really wanted to have kids but couldn't even look after herself. She was always late and overpacked for flights. I'd never missed a flight until I met her. If she couldn't take care of herself, how could she take care of kids? I already knew I'd have to be the breadwinner, so the idea of doing all the cooking, housework, and childcare didn't seem like a partnership. Story 25. She told me I wasn't super masculine, like you're masculine, but not like the men in porn masculine. She also couldn't decide if she wanted to be with me because I didn't appreciate the same music and wasn't spiritual for not having tried psychedelics. Apparently, we didn't share the same interests.